They say a YouTuber never really knows himself until his motivation has been taken away. I wonder, how well do you know yourself?
Gamer, step forward onto the platform.
Grumble, grumble, I'm a smoker. YouTuber 626. Lazy uploader. Bad renderer. Awkward commentator. Today, you go free. But as you'll soon learn, even content has its price.
Gamer suit seal locked.
You'll carry your prison with you. That channel will be your new cell. Make no mistake, uploads are coming, with all its entertainment and all its cringe. Mr. Banana Man, your video awaits. Ah, heck! It's about time. Hello, everybody. My name is Banana Mans, and I've got a challenge run for you. It's not the hardest challenge, but it definitely had some pretty tough roadblocks. And I fluctuate a lot between brutal, normal, and hard mode. But I'll tell you which mission I want on each difficulty. The challenge is as such. Can you beat Wings of Liberty with only one of each unit? Now, right up front, there are going to be some caveats. I don't think it's possible to truly beat the game with literally only one SCV per mission, and only one army unit to run around the whole map. One of each army unit. I don't think that's possible, and so that's not what I'm going to be going for. Instead, I've come up with the following rules. 1. I can only attack with one of each unit, and I can only use that one unit throughout the whole map. This means I can have what I'm going to consider the active squad. This will be the truest form of Highlander in the run, seeing as every time an active unit dies, I need to replace it. Rule number 2, I can defend ramps and choke points with a defensive squad. That means I can have an active squad, and let's say I have 2 choke points, I then have 2 defensive squads. Those squads are not allowed to leave the defense zones, and they're purely there for defense. This allows me to have multiple squads that are still composed solely of unique units, but to hold a defensive line while the active squad is out on the map. In addition, I can only have one turret, bunker, or planetary fortress, etc. per choke point. And I'm allowed to create artificial choke points with other buildings such as eBays or supply depots. If the situation demands it, I'm also allowed to defend with both the defensive and active squad if they're in the same area. Otherwise, every squad will act completely independently without help. My third rule is that I can replace lost members in my active squad with the defensive squad, thematically seeing them as they're in reserve. But I can't outright bank up a bunch of units and have them flood an objective one by one. If the mission gives me extra units, or I accidentally create more, then the general plan is to put them somewhere where they'll never have a chance to do anything, and I can still replace my active units with them. Finally, try to complete all the missions possible and play on the hardest difficulty possible. With that, let's begin. Liberation Day wasn't too tough overall, but I immediately recognized one of the hardest parts of playing on Brutal: enemy upgrades. Not only will I be outnumbered, but every unit will have better upgrades throughout most of the mission. Being honest, I don't think either Liberation Day or the Outlaws would be possible on Brutal, given how tough it is to clear the entire map with such little supply. Regardless, I threw a handful of Marines into the turret-mounted truck in hopes to gunk its barrel while Raynor did most of the damage. Then, the use of civilians as the perfect bullet sponge helped him and his bodyguard finish the rest of the mission. The Outlaws was the first of many missions to take a stupid amount of time. Seeing as I could only have one Marine active at a time and only one defend, I figured I'd have to be quick on my feet before things spiraled. This is also the first mission where I managed to create an artificial choke. This creates an extra line of defense to fall back towards, as well as the ability to get new active units out quicker. For some reason, I didn't quite make a medic right away, which meant I only made getting the rebels harder for myself for no reason. This also showcases one of the hardest parts of getting extra units in the middle of a firefight while not trying to get extra attacks. This made things immediately chaotic, as the rebels instantly got destroyed and I only have a single dude to defend. Surprisingly, the Dominion took its sweet time before getting to me, and I could finally get some medics. Next is the Hellions, and god were they annoying. I made some bunkers in the front to distract possible attack waves, but painstakingly sent a single Marine and medic combo to face the mighty flamethrowers. It took a couple of tries, but eventually I did get them back to my choke and took them out. I will say that I could have used both my defensive and active squads to take them out, but since this was only the second mission, I was still getting the feel for how I wanted to do the challenge. Then, if the Hellions weren't enough, we have the bunker. While making a second artificial choke, I slowly whittled down the bunker until I got it to start burning. After a couple minutes, it finally went down, and now I need to deal with the more overwhelming force of 3 Marines versus 1. After taking them out, I had to deal with even more Marines and Hellions before undergoing the ungodly process of slowly setting every single building on fire. Slowly, yet surely, I took out the factory, supply depots, bunker, tech lab, and then the command center. While I was waiting around, I got very bored and decided to try and make some art with the 10,000 mineral bank I had accumulated after mining out the entire map. For the sake of brevity, despite the mission going on for another eternity, I cleaned out the Dominion base in a cool 41 minutes. After writing the script, I realized that it'd probably be impossible to be brutal because of the siege tank. How in God's name you're supposed to clear out any of that? I have no idea, don't want to find out. Next was 0 Hour. Notoriously easy, even on brutal. I was really wondering how I'd hold the line. Technically, I was given 3 choke points already, but with my only form of defense still standing as a Marine and Medic, I wasn't feeling too excited. I threw all the extra Marines behind the mineral line and prepared to deal with the Zerglings. I died a lot. However, I did manage to secure 2 additional choke points on the northeastern side beyond the bridge. I think this was my saving grace. With 2 SCVs managing to prepare, I was surprised to learn that I didn't even have to worry about my eastern flank for most of the mission. I did, however, have to worry about the western side. With only 1 Marine holding the point, things were going to be rough. Looking back again, I think I failed to use my active squad with the defensive squad up on the ramp, so this mission's probably easier with that in mind. Not to mention, it counts to use the SCVs as part of my active squad. After a bit, I tried to shore up the western side on the bridge, but got overrun again and again. If this is what it's like on normal, when Hydras aren't sniping my medics or my SCVs, I do not want to think about speedlings and banelings. But even as my base got overrun, I used the tried and true method of floating my command center in the corner and waiting for time to go out. While on the Hyperion, I bought the combat shield upgrade, since that 10 extra HP really makes a difference. I decided I'd use the speedrun tactic for smash and grab, but I ran into a few problems. One, these dang stalkers. I don't know exactly what triggers them, but they'll hunt down my barracks and ruin everything. I also figured I wouldn't be able to solo the stone sentinels without the help of a bunker, so I ferried over 2 command centers, though I'm realizing I've already broken the rules after dumping more than 1 around. There's no way to say that there's some sort of defensive spot for my base, which means I can only have 1 Marauder and 1 SCV. After a handful of tries, I did manage to train a Marauder, but these stupid stalkers came back and started attacking my command center, though karma kicked me in the butt when I accidentally triggered the objective with an SCV. I reloaded the save, prepared a Marine, Medic, SCV, and Marauder inside a bunker, and used a CC to distract one of the statues. This was all barely enough to finish out the mission. Then, I opted to skip out on mercenaries for now and buy the stabilizer med packs for some extra healing from my medics. Later on, I think the mercs are extremely strong, since they count as different units and are simply better in every way. Next up on Agria, it's time for the evacuation. Firebats suck at dealing damage and get overwhelmed easily, which means my entire squad almost gets annihilated before I arrive at the settlement. I don't know what happens if you fail to reach the objective point. Anyway, I finally make it to the settlement and manage to use the choke points on this mission to hold off each Zerg wave. I normally spam a massive army and escort it, but obviously I can't do that, and so the use of walls really helped create some distance. Even without the planetary fortress upgrade, CCs are just a big body, and so it's pretty easy to make some walls that get some distance between my defensive line and the objective. This honestly made the mission a cakewalk, and I think it's possible on hard, though things might be a completely different ballgame with the addition of Banelings, Ultralisks, and all that mess. Moving on, I got fortified bunkers from the lab and concussive shells from the armory before making my way to Minehof. This mission was the perfect example of how difficult it can be to use only one of each unit when attacking. This is also where I think it'd truly be impossible to hold off with exactly one of each unit, given the sheer amount of enemies that come each night. That being said, I'll spare everyone an hour and a half spent on this mission. It took 10 days, and I mined out the entire map, a recurring theme for this run, and built more artificial chokes to bolster my defense. I also got extremely bored waiting for my army to clear all 144 buildings. If I were to do this again, or anyone else wants to try it, I'd recommend getting the Reapers first, because you don't need the Hellions for Redstone, but you could use the Reapers for Outbreak. Before moving on to Redstone, though, I got the turret upgrades and called it good. Later in the run, I think this one really saved me. The Devil's Playground was decently easy, and I think I could try it again on hard. Using only one Reaper didn't change the ability to gather resources, and I even cheesed the Brutalisk with lava. After making sure I could defend each base, it was simple enough to wait for my bank to hit 8k. With the Research Console, I got the Planetary Fortress, another massive upgrade that saved the run, as well as G4 bombs for Reapers and +2 armor for Hellbats. The former was not as useful as I thought it would be, though it did help zone the AI on higher difficulties, and the latter really cemented the Firebat as a damage sponge. Belshir is always scary. Rid yourself of the need to turtle and embrace greed. Building a choke point and gathering all the gases at once is the only way I could think of getting head-to-head with the Sky Toss. Again, I think going brutal would absolutely destroy my armies, with Carriers, Colossi, and Psionic Storm. No thanks. That being said, I managed to clear out this mission easily due to the aforementioned strat of getting all the gases early. It's also, at this point, I think I should say that I've started having a lot of fun with my small squad of special forces that go head-to-head against endless tides of Zerg and Protoss, and I got a lot of mileage out of the micro-heavy moments this challenge demands. I also got Ultra Capacitors because that's the only option, and I bought all of the mercs available. Next is Haven's Fall. Similar to Belshir, I doubt a single Marine, Viking, and Goliath could take out a carrier, let alone the Purifier, so it's time to save what we can and the rest. The Broodlords on this mission are the most annoying, followed closely by the corrupt Muta packs that guard them. But As soon as every single settlement was infested, all I had to do was slowly pick at the waves and waves of Zerg. The Viking also has become a fundamental unit throughout this run, with literally only it and the battle cruiser serving as my A-to-A. After a grueling 50 minutes, I cleared out the last infected area and properly handled the problem in the lab.
You're infested. You're dead already.
Then I bought the extra repair speed and efficiency for SCVs, as well as the Goliath ability to shoot both ground and air at the same time. Very useful. Next up is the dig, which was one of the most aggravating starting sections yet. With such a small area, I really had to try and not get the extra Marines to attack, while also fighting a losing battle. I died more times than I thought I would until I thought about running past to trigger the event that gives me siege tanks. Again, it was hard to micro both my fighting force and prevent the extra units from attacking, but after a few dozen times, I figured it didn't impact the run enough to worry about. Then, it was on the actual mission, and I used the planetary fortress to its highest potential. A siege tank and a fortress single-handedly held both of my fronts while getting some backup from my other squads. Additionally, the ultra capacitors on siege tanks is one of my favorite combos, despite being pretty busted. After really setting up, I opted not to
Swing that laser around.
too often, thinking that it'd be more beneficial to finish the mission and trust in my defenses. I did get all the research though. With the dig in the rearview mirror, I got visited by some ninja hobo and started tripping balls. Thankfully, all 3 Protoss missions were pretty easy since I could rush through them with little worry. Notice how I say 3, because even on casual mode, I doubt it's possible to complete Utter Darkness. I don't even feel like it, I don't want to try it, I'm not going to go back. During the run, I was not in the mood, and even now, there's no way I'm going to throw myself against the 1500 kill wall requirement. But with all that juicy research, I got the Hercules, bonus starting energy, more efficient Vespine, double SCV production, and the mighty science vessel. This guy slaps. He's the MVP of the whole run. Not only is he just a better regenerative biosteel, not only is he a detector, but his radiation ability is surprisingly useful. Several times throughout the run I got overwhelmed by either Terran or Zerg, and covering all the units in a gross sticky cloud of ickiness saved me every single time I used it. I even got to save some of my tank lines thanks to that irradiating stuff working on mechanical units without damaging them, and it ended up killing all the Zerglings surrounding my tanks. Next up is Ghost of a Chance with our girl, Nova. Snipe is an ability that I want to use frequently in the future, so we go with Ghosts to get that sweet, sweet burst damage. I almost get Nova killed at the start of the mission, but she has just enough HP to tank and clear the whole level pretty much by herself. I should also mention this is the first mission I went back up to Brutal. Using Nova to dominate any special units, while healing her with a medic made everything go pretty smoothly. And the nukes she used were pretty effective clearing the most dangerous sections. I also killed all 10 Spectres and made my way to Moebius Factor.
Transmission coming in. It's Tosh.
Didn't take long for him to gloat. Patch him through.
Hey, look at me! I made this cool puppet of you, dude. You're like my favorite Blizzard character.
That's supposed to be me?
What? You don't like it? I mean, I even made this after the HOTS changed when you got really busted and every pug was filled with auto attack garbage.
You're a scumbag, Tosh.
Hey, don't be mean. I'm just trying to do an upload. And is scumbag really warranted?
No, you don't get it at all. And now, you never will.
What? Are you salty that they had to change, give him some pepper, and that Greymane is just a better damage dealer overall?
Cold and efficient. Reminds me of someone I used to know. Glad you're not after me.
Don't worry, guys. I took the level 20 talent for triple tap so I can spam that instead of snipe and let Johanna take every shot.
Kill shot confirmed. First blood.
Anyway, I got the siege breakers and their damage upgrade, and prepped for the Moebius Factor. I forgot I was on Brutal, and this mission sucked. I don't think it's possible to clear the 3500 HP objective with only a Marine and a Goliath. Because A, I got overwhelmed by Mutas and Hydras, and B, Kerrigan gets to the objective. Eventually I set the difficulty to hard, and did manage to squeak out a victory thanks to the Hercules. I got a tank to snipe the objectives, and a Viking to help with air defense. Then I used nukes to zone out, while my forces focused on the data cores. Maybe this is possible on Brutal, but it's a real challenge.
Confirmed. The final data core has been destroyed. We should evacuate immediately.
I then got the Viking Mercs and the Orbital Command upgrade. The Great Train Robbery was tough at first, but easier once I started zoning people out with tanks and nukes. This was on hard, and I really don't think Brutal's possible because the upgrades really make a difference. The first go around though, I had a pretty bad engagement and missed a couple of the trains, but setting up with a nuke helped clear the defenders while my army focused down the train. Again, I ran out of minerals, and the only unit that could hit the fast trains was the Diamondback. Every fast train was a close shave, and I nearly lost the mission multiple times because of this. Those ultra capacitors really helped me push the auto attack just barely enough. After that, I bought the dual heal upgrades for medevacs and headed for Deadman's Port. I don't know what I did wrong here, but I really thought you could planetary rush Orlin. Maybe on the easier difficulties, but I did go back up to Brutal. I tried to finagle a method, but I couldn't do it before collecting 6k. At first I thought it would be impossible to wipe out each base, defend the surprisingly deadly attack waves, and spend the money to get powerful enough units that can survive on their own. And at first I was right about this. After many failures, I got a good strat figured out. I used the Bulwark of a tank Goliath mix to get some nice damage while my bio went between defending and supporting. Then, I used some mercs to clear the second bottom base, and the Cloaked Ghost to snipe pretty much everything else. This worked surprisingly well, and I moved to clear the top CC while also expanding my own. This worked, and I managed to get through level 3 research, while also getting enough scrap to boost my way to 6k. Then I got destroyed by an attack wave and had to clear that up. Then I realized that 90% of the mercs I get were duplicates, and I could only use one of them for defense. This meant A slow 20-minute grind of scanning the high ground and shelling it with my 2 tanks while also spamming nukes. That was before I ran out of minerals. Again. And kept using my tanks to attack waves because the AI loves to target my healers and tanks. I let my bottom base get destroyed and opted back for the slow grind. For the sensor tower, I could see where the attacks were coming, and I was very happy to see the full might of the siege breakers on display. Even a single one of these guys can melt pretty much anything it hits. I'm definitely naming my first 40k tank the siege breaker. Anyway, at some point, I really got annoyed and decided just to go for it, with my tank distracting the battle cruiser and my forces rushing to the planetary. And surprisingly, it worked. A slog of a mission down, several more to go. I got permacloak from my ghosts, and this felt really good. Being able to save energy from mass snipes, even with a single ghost, meant I could do a lot of damage to multiple weak units or a single huge one. I hate SuperNova. I hate observers, and I hate detection range. Maybe I'm taking characters like Zeratul and Nova for granted by allowing you to see the exact radius, but having to thread the needle every time my single Banshees get past the Protoss really sucked. Not only this, but my weak defense squad can maybe defend 2 waves before completely getting smashed. And I can't spend too many resources on defense since A, the whole firewall thing, and B, I need to spend enough resources to actually damage the objective. After a good 4 hours on this mission alone, I'll spare everyone the massive pain in the ass this was. Basically, Brutal and Hard mode are both impossible because they have observers and they get rebuilt and they chase down your Banshee. Because I only have 1 Banshee, I can't burst down the objective between nukes, which means the observer's going to get rebuilt. And I can't deal with the cannons because I'll get chased. On top of that, the AI likes to pick up your ghost before he nukes, and does that instead of focusing the Banshee, which means this just wastes a bunch of time, the nuke and the ghost. Even on normal mode, the AI will do this, but the key difference is that there are no observers. I think this is another mission where it's impossible on Brutal and Hard, simply given by the low amount of damage output a single Banshee and Ghost can dish out. Anyway, I beat this stupid mission and got 3 out of 4 research. I got the fancy reactor at first, but after an hour or 2 in Maw of the Void, I decided to load back for Orbital Strike. This was pretty nice for Maw and Char, so I'm happy to pick that one instead. I also bought Better Cloak for Banshees before the mission. Maw of the Void also sucks. More Sky Toss, more cannons, more observers. The attack waves on this mission are rough. Even on normal, without upgrades, Carriers, Void Rays, and Phoenix annihilate my single Viking and my single Battlecruiser, making this mission another crazy long slog with very little prospects. That was until I swapped to normal mode and used orbital bombardments to spam nukes all over the place. I had to think before spamming, given how little resources are available on this mission. Another toll I didn't notice until now is the sheer amount of resources spent on repair. I didn't track any numbers, but I wouldn't be surprised if a total of 25 to 30% or more of my total resources were spent on repairs alone. Anyway, I used nukes to clear cannons, DTs to clear the generators, and soloed the objective with a single ghost. put Engine of Destruction off for good reason, and I absolutely hate the starting section. I'm going to say that it's impossible on Brutal because Tychus likes to throw himself so quickly into enemy fire, I think he changed his mind about working for Mengsk. I tried on hard, and it sucks just as much. It feels pretty random if Tychus will run into the range of either both or one of the auto turrets, and regardless of that, he'll certainly run into the next group of enemies in front of him. After only a couple tries, I decided to spare my sanity and drop it down to normal. The rest of the mission was just making sure the Odin didn't die and poking the sections ahead of him with nukes and tanks. After the mission, I had gotten lots of extra money, and I got the Hive Mind emulator too. Just like with the Mercs, I can only use one hive-minded Zerg per active or defensive squad, but even with that limitation, having access to Infestors, Ultras, and Brood Lords was invaluable. I also got both upgrades for the Battlecruiser, the Merc, and replenishable Vulture Mines. I should have got SCV build stacking, but I thought the mines would give a little more value. They didn't, but there weren't really enough missions left in the game to find out. Next was Media Blitz. Similar to the last mission, I just let the Odin blow up everything around him. I'm keeping this one short because it's pretty straightforward, and I managed to beat it on Brutal, and even got to the secret mission. Speaking of the secret mission, it was pretty easy all things considered. Raynor's abilities tipped the scale when it felt like there were too many units, and it was easy enough to ignore everything else when the hybrid starts chasing you.
Char, if hell ever existed, this is it. Oceans of fire, tectonic storms, and an atmosphere that'll burn a man alive. But we've planned for all of that.
You stupid dummy head. Infestor Broodlord is too strong of a build right now. There's literally nothing you can do about it.
I've led 5 separate invasions against the Swarm. I held the line while you and your terrorist friends hid under a rock.
We're all aware of your victories, General. I've invited Commander Raynor here to assist us with any unforeseen contingencies.
Well, I mean, thanks for interrupting, Anduin.
I have far too much invested in this undertaking to see it fail. Speaking of which, you might particularly enjoy this next step.
Valerian, I've just received a report you've taken half the fleet. Care to explain yourself, boy?
Father, I am about to accomplish that which you never could. Today, I will defeat the Queen of Blades and secure peace throughout the Dominion. By this act, the people will finally know that I am a worthy successor to you.
I love your gumption, son, but you're in way over your head. What makes you think you have...
He ain't alone, doo-doo head.
Raynor. I don't know what gutter my son fished you out of, but even you got to realize that treacherous bitch cannot be saved. And neither can you.
Whoa. Whoa, dude. Don't swear. That's rude and uncalled for.
Everything I could have hoped for.
You're playing a dangerous game here, kid.
Prince Valerian, we have Zerg attack waves incoming.
Already?
Yeah, bro. It's called a 12 pool. The Gates of Hell was long. On Brutal, but not getting the siege tank upgrade that shields your allies kinda sucked, since I'd hit the other tank and bunker when they were getting attacked, and even kill the medic / SCVs that were nearby. This was annoying, but it only happened once or twice, so I didn't care too much. My first plan was to secure the base. Drop pods be damned. This was easy enough to do with planetary fortresses and the Hive Mind emulator, but the large amount of new to Brood Lord really hurt my forces. When you're only allowed to build one of each dude, maxing out, I think, is literally impossible. Trying to get artificial chokes seemed too dangerous, and I couldn't tell if the hive mind counted towards the supply count. Additionally, the low resources meant repairing all of my defense really cut into trying to get a strong enough force to actually branch out. Eventually, after a while, I decided to break from the hard limits of the challenge and create enough Marines/Hellions to reach the supply quota without ever using them. Why Marines and Hellions? Because everything else was too expensive. After Warfield crashes, I had already been making my way around the map with Jackson's Revenge, my battlecruiser, and a science vessel. I was able to Yamato spores and corruptors, while also dropping a mule to heal. At the same time, I got a ghost to drop at the crash site and start nuking the Nidus worms. This worked pretty well, and it was time to pick my poison. I had decided to go with Shatter the Sky due to how poor my anti-air was. With only one turret per choke, and essentially pure battlecruiser, I was concerned that mass broodlords would completely destroy my forces. I opted not to take the unknown risk with this one, and instead took the one I was very familiar with, Nidus worms. I, to this day, have not gotten aces high, and I'm a bit ashamed with that, but I'll talk more about my strategy during All In, since for now we have to deal with the orbital platform. This mission wasn't horrible, just really, really long. And by this point my elite attack forces comprised of heavy tanks, battlecruisers, and Thors, while getting support from heals and a ghost. One by one, I managed to clear all the platforms, avoid the Leviathan, and rush down the last coolant tower while having to stop to defend a couple times. Shatter the Sky was on Brutal, but I don't think All-In is possible on anything higher than normal. I think the upgrade deficit, along with the intensity of the Nidus waves, is far too much. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm proud with what I managed to pull off. My biggest concerns was threefold. I can't have mass Banshees to snipe the worms, I can't have mass Tank to deal with the ground, and I can't have mass Ghost to snipe down Kerrigan. This was on top of the fact that I only have 2 choke points in my active squad, meaning it's really going to depend on proper placement to fend off this Zerg. I built 2 fortresses and moved all my forces back. I threw all the extras in the mineral line and conceded that it was likely the extra Marines would kill an Overlord or 2, but at the end of the day a single Overlord isn't going to make a difference. The most important units on each line were Banshees and BCs in the sky, with tanks and Thors on the ground. Additionally, I had a cloaked ghost to snipe any major threats, but his auto attack also helped chip in. Finally, for support, I had a medic, SCV, and science vessel keep everything alive. It took several tries to get a proper setup before I had the time to make Jackson's Revenge and an extra BC to snipe Nidus worms. On top of that, I opted to get nukes to have 4 forces out on the map at a time, the 2 BCs, the Banshee, and the Ghost. This meant a lot of multitasking, rerouting attacks to avoid detection, changing plans when I got overwhelmed. This might have been one of the biggest reasons why hard or brutal would be too difficult, given that they send overseers with pretty much every wave and I wouldn't be able to have an individual Ghost or Banshee out on the map alone. And the map gets covered with spines and spores. Another problem I had to work out was making sure the waves would aggro onto my defense line instead of the artifact. That would mean having the unit out to attack them, or having to fully reset to make sure my planetaries were in a good enough spot. Needless to say, there were a lot of resets. I've got about 2 hours of experimentation, deciding which units to build first, which upgrades are most important, and even how many SCVs seem to make the structures build fast enough without completely trashing eco. Even though SuperNova takes the cake with 4.5 hours of footage, I'll say that the pure amount of focus and proper decision making for All In really makes it the hardest mission yet. Eventually, I was able to consistently deal with the Nidus worms without a problem, but then Kerrigan attacks. Every time she attacks, she'll either use Razor Swarm or Implosion, which either shreds my buildings or instantly kills a single unit of her choice. This is often, I've found, the most expensive unit. I've had at least 6 reloads from Jackson's Revenge getting destroyed every single time, or even my regular BCs, and you can really feel the DPS deficit of the missing tank, Banshee, or BC, so I came up with the strategy to sacrifice 3 units every time a Kerrigan spawned. As easy of a solution as this sounds, it means that I can't build replacements, which means every loss feels even harder. With all of this, I finally got a consistent strategy. Sack the air units, spam snipe, fire Yamato cannon, and pray that she dies quickly. If I lost the planetaries, it was a reset. If I lost too much to properly deal with the Nidus, it was a reset. Thankfully, I wasn't trying to get aces high, and I could spam the artifact every chance I got. And believe me, I did. But with all my ducks finally in a row, every contingency planned for, and every unit maximized, I beat the final mission, and Kerrigan went down. Audience members,
You reading all this? You have your orders, Mr. Findlay. Carry them out.
retention rate. What have you done?
I made a deal with the devil, Jimmy. She dies, I go free.
We all got our choices to make.
Damn shame.
Banana Man?
It's okay. I got you. Well, I did it. Took me about 2 days of grinding, but it was really a lot of fun. I think this definitely counts as a tough challenge, but it never felt stale or like I was resorting to the exact same strategy every time. Don't get me wrong, trudging through each mission for hours definitely felt rough, but I pushed on and I'm very happy with the results. I think this is where I'll leave it for now. I want to thank you so much for sticking through. If you enjoyed, don't forget to like, sub, and leave a comment. I put a lot of effort into this video, so I'm hoping it gets good reception. My final note is about Heart of the Swarm and Legacy of the Void. I'm interested in trying a Highlander run for both of them, but I'd be very pressed to even think that Lab Rat on casual is doable, seeing as I can only attack the robots with a drone and a Zergling. So there might be some specific missions you can do, especially given that Kerrigan gets pretty busted, but how are you going to do the early game? Anyway, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Thank you so much for watching, and that'll be all from me today. Bye-bye, have a great day.